Welcome everyone, Shadowblight Necro is back. Watch closely, you activate your ulti and then you just spam away Blight like there's no tomorrow. Hold down that button. Well, don't get hit by the poison. And billions of critical strike shadow damage. Billions. Our ultimate, Shadowblight, that triggers every 8th time an enemy takes shadow damage, is going nuts. And that's all thanks to the Even Piercer amulet with a greater affix to Reaper's Pursuit. Reaper's Pursuit is the passive that gives you, with 16 ranks, 32% more multiplicative damage per darkness skill in your skill bar. Well, darkness. All the darkness. And the build is not only good for bossing, no, it's just flying through the pit. That's a pit 80 already cleared with plenty of time to spare. You're just throwing blights, corpse exploding 3 times, throwing blights, corpse exploding 3 times to keep up your flesh eater multiplier, and then just speedrun. Because not only does Reaper's Pursuit give you damage, it also gives you 32 plus movement speed with 6 skills, so we're 200% movement speed anyways. Any piece of content where speed is necessary, like going for Tributes of Harmony, Refinement, or Titans, is an absolute cakewalk for the build. You just run, glide, and keep running. Don't even have to look back at how they die, because they'll die. Activate this thingy, spam some blights. Should be enough to get him killed. Already moving off to the next one. It's that good, and it's that much fun. Now, where does our actual damage come from? Is it Blight? No. It's all the Shadowblight Keep passive. This one deals 200,000 shadow damage every 8th time someone receives shadow damage. So if the Shadowblight thing tick, 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 with the initial and with the ticks, or the corpse explosion, and at the same time the soul rift going, sucking souls. That's all shadow damage. That's triggering Shadowblight like a rapid fire pop, 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 pop. This damage is increased by 70% of your corruption damage and shadow damage bonus. And we get the 450% multiplier. So that's already 200,000 damage times 450%. And then times 32% with 6 skills. And since Shadowblight is a one-time damage and not damage over time, we can go for critical strike chance and full critical strike damage to multiply it upwards. At the Doom aspect on top, each time the Shadowblight Key passive deals damage to enemies, it increases the next Shadowblight's damage within 10 seconds by 45%, stacking up to 5 times. That can go up to a 50% total, so 250% damage stacking on top of each other. But the real damage is coming from the Blighted aspect. Consecutive hits with Shadowblight Key passive deal 70% increased damage for each hit, resetting after 6 seconds of the first. Which means if we machine gun cast the Shadowblight procs, the shadow damage, it goes 60, 60, 60, 60, 60, 60, 60, up into the billions. We're going to go for a boss training dummy. Now we get shadow damage, shadow damage, shadow damage. Activate everything. And the actual critical procs you see, this is the Shadowblight. And it goes up into the high billions. Obviously, it has this 6-second timer then, but we're just 6, 7 billion, 5 billion, 4 billion, more billion. The billions are so much that you don't even, that's the 7 billion, that's the highest. And then you, like, the more shadow damage you apply to your enemy, the more alive your enemy is, the more he's standing inside of this, the more it kind of compounds outwards and just chokes them to death. That's why it works so well in the pit. Because in the pit, monsters have more HP, and therefore we can just oh no, you're alive a little bit longer. That's perfect, because my damage can actually compound. Otherwise, my damages ain't going high enough, because you're already dead before it can really get the maximum values. In order for this to work, we need to take every shadow skill possible, and also the 20% bonus damage with this supernatural blight, and then have the corpse explosion be a shadow skill as well. We're getting the barrier up if we do damage, Titan's Fall, and the spiked armor to really multiply our armor upwards that we reach the 1000. Then you get your curse, but we're casting the curse over an aspect because we don't want the curse in here. No, we want the maximum amount of damage possible from the Reaper's Pursuit, as well as bonus ranks to Gloom, because when you damage enemies with darkness skills, they take 10% increased damage from you and your minions for 2 seconds, stacking up to 4 times. It's another 40% bonus damage. with Terror giving us another 9 and 9% bonus damage. Very important is the Inspired Leader for that 12% bonus critical strike chance, because we really want critical strike chance since our main damage is Shadowblight critting. Weapon has the blighted aspect and then chance for blight projectiles to cast twice, that you're getting as much blight as possible on the opponent as fast as possible. Also, you need to temper shadow damage, because shadow damage is what's responsible to get that Shadowblight key passive to do the 450% with a crit damage in max life. On the gauntlets, we talked about the Doom aspect for that stacking Shadowblight damage. Here we want attack speed, crit chance, and then intelligence, plus shadow damage and Soul Rift duration. That Soul Rift is permanently up, because Soul Rift is our source of vulnerable and replenishes our essence that we can actually machine gun spam the blight out. That's also why the next two pieces, your chest and your helmet, need to have essence per second. With this essence per second, and then also the Soul Rift and all the Soul Rift duration tempers, you're totally able to just keep this up. Yet we are slowly depleting still, but I'm also not having the Soul Rift. So if I do Soul Rift and then I stand at the boss, you don't want to be limited by the amount of Shadow Blights you can throw, right? Like, we want to be able to throw blights like there's no tomorrow. Helmet get currently maximum life and intelligence. The armor has maximum life and intelligence as well. More int is more all damage, so get it. Then we have the Decrepify aspect and aspect of Hardened Bones for that damage reduction. Also, we're playing the rune Neo. If I don't take any damage, then I'll get 200 offering, and that lets me do Frost Nova, because I'll pull everyone together with the Blights and the aspect of the Void. Yep, fantastic aspect to have them all in one place, and then freeze them outwards. Very useful. On my chest, I'm currently playing cast 5 skills, then become exhausted for 3 seconds, and I'm building up bonus critical strike chance like that. Bonus 25%, together with the 74.3% I have anyways. Well, don't mind if I do. I'm trying to get to that 100% crit. Hands are the Blood Moon Breaches, and it seems weird because none of these is useful. Like Hellbound Commander's bad, Golem Mastery's bad, Curse Skills is fine, and you want that 18% critical strike chance. But they give you also a 50% multiplier. There are pens that give you a 50% multiplier. It's the simplest bonus damage you can get. Your boots need to have armor, max life, intelligence. The armor is mandatory. Then we get movement speed, even though that's actually not needed because you're moving like crazy. Soul Rift duration and Blight pulls things together. On your rings, we're looking optimally for crit chance and attack speed together, plus then intelligence. For the shadow damage and ultimate cooldown, the aspect is the aspect of the Dam for the 51% bonus shadow damage to cursed enemies. My second ring is shit, for example, has overpower damage. I need to retemper that to attack speed as well, because more attack speed allows you to then faster put out blights, allows you faster to have the chain gun shadow blight happening, to then have this proc go pop like crazy. On the second ring, we have the sacrificial aspect that we get a bonus to our sacrifices, more shadow damage, more damage to vulnerable, and more critical strike damage. Way too useful to not have. An amulet we talked about is Eben Piercer from Gregoire the Galvanic Saint. And there you definitely want the greater affix to Reaper's Pursuit. And then second greater affix would be to Gloom and chance for blight projectiles to cast twice. Optimally, a 100% chance for blight projectiles to cast twice would be great. Do we need to look at the blight damage here? No. It doesn't matter if the Eben Piercer has high double multi-projectile blight damage, something like that. You don't need that, because your damage is not your blight. Your damage is simply the Shadow Blight critting, and then going for those billions over billions over billions of damage. And now before you ask, Pony, isn't Xfals great for this build because we're spamming damage over time, and then we could get this 9,000 damage super proc going crazy? That's 9,000 damage that would have to multiply upwards with all the things we're doing, while we're focusing on getting our Shadow Blight as high as possible, and that is a 200,000 base damage. So having a ring that does 9,000 or 200,000 from our key passive that is also bound to lucky hit, I'll take the 200,000 and just try to make the most out of it. For our jewels, we're playing the Idol from below with the 6% core stats and the 6% maximum life. Then the Seal of Power that gives us movement speed and crit chance if we have 2 Arcana of Power. We have that. And Scornful Light for the 20% bonus elemental damage. Shadow damage in this case counts as elemental damage. We do have the Disintegrate Beam. I did try to use the Astro Pillar, but what happens is that I don't get enough barrier, because the Disintegrate is now responsible to hand me barrier with a bottled wind, and also to make me unstoppable that I can just spam away. And then lastly, with a reactive ooze, I get bonus resource generation because I need another power arcana to get the 15% bonus crit. Lastly, we have the nebulous extract, so we infuse this with shadow to get even more damage reduction. Quite useful. I could technically use the gleaming conduit to increase the effect size of my catalyst, but I simply haven't gotten this instead of then the reactive ooze. Finally, the Paragon board. We do need the abyssal glyph. That's non-physical damage, 15%, and boosting the rare glyphs. Didn't have the chance to put the points yet in for the knowledge for that bonus 40% damage. That brings us into Scent of Death. We multiply up our critical strike damage and we get damage reduction, as we actually have here with a resistance to all elements, because our resistance to all elements can be a little bit fickle this season. Here we're also playing the Sacrificial Glyph for another 15% damage if we don't have any minions. Leading into the Frailty board for another 40% bonus damage, together with the Gravekeeper Glyph, 18% bonus damage if you have enough corpses close by. Your Shadowblight, Blight, Corpse Explosion, everything is continuously making enough corpses. We definitely do want the attack speed here. This would lead into the Bone Graft board, and the only reason we're taking the Bone Graft board is because it does have damage reduction and resistance to all elements, together with more maximum life and resistance to all elements, into a huge chunk of dexterity, and I don't even have all dexterity taken. In total, you can take 74 points, I think 79 points, yeah, to get all that critical strike damage upwards. Lastly, you get the Flesh Eater board. As you then consume 3 corpses, 40% bonus damage. You mostly don't do that versus bosses. You don't do it in Helltide or any other content, but for the pit, that bonus damage is very needed. And this also then has the Eliminator glyph. More int is more resistance, is more all damage, is more everything. What do you say, ladies and gentlemen? Do I have you convinced on that Shadowblight crit Necromancer? The potential should definitely be pit 100, as I can easily keep leveling up my glyph. Currently sitting at pit 80, 85, 90. 80 are no problems with the current setup, and 90 would allow me to bring every glyph up to 70, 80, and then I can just boink out that pit 100 easily. If you're now looking for bonus tips on progression and gear, got you covered. Enjoy, have a fantastic good time.